Thank everybody. Mr. President, Madam Secretary, one of the things that most I vividly remember was in New Hampshire when our poll numbers were dropping faster than the thermometer. We had a group called the Arkansas Travelers. How many travelers we have here? And I wish that the two of you could talk about what it meant to be in that environment and the things that we were going through, and to know that you had so many people back home here in Arkansas that loved y'all so much.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank all of you for making this possible. It's true, as James said, our poll numbers were dropping faster than the temperature, and it was cold. And it was obviously part of a strategy, because I had already been warned by the White House that if I ran for president, my poll numbers would drop quickly and early in the primary. And so I was expecting it. I didn't know exactly how they were going to get it done, but I was sure it was well organized, and they would have plenty of people obliging them. So all of a sudden, all this is going on, and then this full-page ad appears in the Manchester Union Leader with 600 Arkansans, and I know younger people will find it hard to believe there were no cell phones, or they weighed 5 pounds. 5 pounds. And so 600 people from Arkansas put their phone number in an ad in the Manchester Union Leader and said, "Don't believe what they're telling you about our governor. Call us, collect. We'll pay for the call and tell you the truth." I'll never forget it. Then the Arkansas Travelers had already been there. Another 150 people dropped what they were doing, and most of them drove on their own to New Hampshire. And they put 100,000 drops on doors, and they turned it around. And the rest is history. So if it hadn't been for the people of Arkansas, there weren't enough of us to go around. We wouldn't have made it. So thank you.
Well, you know, New Hampshire in late 91 and 92, and it was a much shorter campaign. Bill didn't actually announce until early October, if you can imagine, October of 91. So it wasn't one of these endless, long, grueling campaigns. It started with a burst of energy. We flew to New Hampshire for the first time as a potential candidate and his team. And we found a really receptive audience of people who understood that we needed change and we needed the kind of energy and dynamism that Bill was representing. So we spent a lot of time between late October into January, early February in New Hampshire. And what James is talking about was a truly horrible moment. I had spent the day, Bill was there as well, at the Manchester Mall. And we'd been greeting people there, and just random people, whoever walked into the mall. I would say hello, introduce myself, say that I was obviously campaigning for Bill, ask for their vote, because the primary was about 48 hours away. And I got a really good response. People seemed to be very interested and positive, and you just felt like, hey, maybe it was turning around. Then we went back to the little hotel we were camped out in, and we had a meeting with our pollsters, and the pollsters said, "You're just dropping like a rock, and you may not stay even in double digits." And I remember, James, sitting there thinking, well, that sure is not the way it felt. And I have to say, one of the big differences between 92 and certainly 2016 is you felt like you could connect much better and more deeply and more quickly with people. So I thought, okay, that's what the poll is saying, but it's not what I feel. And I said, I'm going to bed, because I didn't see what else we could do. We'd done everything we knew to do. And so when the primary came and Bill finished a surprising and high second, I was really hopeful. And one of the brilliant strategic decisions that were made in the New Hampshire primary came when, as you saw in the movie, Bill went out first and basically claimed victory, even though he had finished second. And it was just an explosion because he'd lost. But compared to what we thought was going to happen, oh, he had won big. And from that moment on, he had momentum and he had so much support. And I know there are some people from New Hampshire who along the way have helped us in so many elections and primaries. And the people of New Hampshire really sent him forward into the remaining contests.
Yeah, I also think it's important to point out, that it is true, as Hillary said, we finished second. Everybody thought we were going to finish fifth. And we went down and came back up. And my principal opponent, Paul Tsongas, was from a town that was 5 miles from the New Hampshire border. So he beat me like a yard dog in the first 10 miles of New Hampshire next to Massachusetts. On the whole rest of New Hampshire, thanks to a lot of people in this room, we won. And so when they said, the political press said, well, you lost anyway, I said, yes, I did. And I congratulate Senator Tsongas. Now let's see how he does when we get to Memphis. And it had the desired effect. It was great. So it was unbelievable. But New Hampshire was one of the greatest experiences, I think, in our lives. And the thing that I liked was people talked to you about real problems, real dreams, and they wanted real answers. They weren't interested in how well you could badmouth your opponent or what you could say. They want to know, what were you going to do to help them with their lives? And I will never forget it as long as I live.
Recently, in politics, we keep hearing, well, the politicians say one thing and they do another. And the 92 campaign, as I recall, was pretty specific. It was called Putting People First. I think there was a sign that said, "Is the economy stupid?" And you were very clear to the campaign and very clear to the American people that what you wanted to do was build an economy that worked across America. Nothing was any clearer. That was the promise you made. And I want you to, and Ms. Clinton, you can go along with this, also this too, talk about the 8 years that you were president and talk about the things that happened across America. So at the end of the day, when we had this sort of focus campaign that people call sloganeering and sound bites and everything, that you were really clear. If you look back, and let's talk about what happened to the economy and what happened to people all across America in that last 8 years. I think that's very important in this sort of moment of national cynicism that we have.
Well, first of all, we were already seeing 25 years ago the kind of thing that people were so upset about this time, which is very, very uneven levels of economic growth, both by income and also by region. So there was growing income inequality and lower mobility. And what I said was, if you give me a chance, we'll try to build an economy that puts you first, where you can all be a part of it. Then you got a responsibility to educate your children and then train yourself to do what's available. I can't repeal the laws of economics, but we can shape it so you can do better. And so our theory was, if we gave people incentives to invest everywhere, we focused on the future and then trained people for jobs we knew would grow in number, we could drive down unemployment and get rid of the deficit at the same time and grow the economy faster. So what happened? After 8 years, it was the only time in a long time that all quintiles of the economy grew together, that the bottom 20% of our people actually had their incomes increase in percentage terms as much as the top 5% and greater than the top 20%. Then that because we grew the economy from the bottom up, African American families' incomes went up 32%, Hispanics 24%, overall 17%, and there was no interracial tension because we just grew it from the bottom up instead of from the top down. So everybody's incomes went up, and we did it together, and it's the only time it had happened in a month of Sundays. It was a hugely important thing, and obviously that's what I was hoping would happen again this time. That's the only thing that works. We proved that growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up works, and trying to grow it from the top down doesn't. And I hate to see us go down that road again, because we're going to reach the same dead end we did before. It works to do it the way we did. Put the people first, they'll take everybody else along.
The other aspect of this, which I really thought was amazing, is in addition to growing the economy for everybody, by the end of Bill's 8 years, the budget was balanced, we had a surplus, and if we had continued the policies of the Clinton administration, we would have eliminated our national debt. Now, that seems almost impossible to believe. I was in the Senate in 2001, and all of a sudden, the new Republican administration said, well, you know, we've got a surplus. We need to give it back to the people, meaning the very richest of Americans. And so let's cut taxes, and then we'll go back and show you, maybe it didn't work before, but we'll show you that we can trickle down and have economic growth. And a number of us said, you know, why would we undermine the hard work of 8 years? Because remember, when Bill became president, he inherited an economy that had a growing deficit and debt. The prior 12 years had quadrupled the debt of America, more than at any other time in our entire previous history. And he was determined to try to reverse that because he believed, number one, it was good for the economy, and it was responsible, and it was what we should be doing for our children and our grandchildren. It was really, really hard. The economic plan, the deficit reduction plan, passed in each house by one vote. And not a single Republican voted for it, and instead, they beat the drum day after day about how this policy of raising taxes on the wealthy, of getting more revenue to be able to invest in our people by putting people first, was going to wreck the economy. And they were dead wrong. Now, we're hearing the same baloney today, right? And this is, you know, look, I know we live in a really speeded up world, but it is important to remember history and important to learn the lessons of history, not revisionist, made up, phony history, but real history. And we know how to grow the economy in a modern, globalized world. And it's heartbreaking when you saw the results, when you saw people getting ahead for the first time. More people were lifted out of poverty in Bill's 8 years than at any previous time in our history. And so believe me, it's frustrating, because if you try to live in the reality-based world that, you know, I think is where we should live, making these points and not being able to get them across or have them believed, you know, it's the fairy tale of economics that it's going to trickle down. We're going to make everything great. Yeah, we may be cutting Medicare and Medicaid and health care and make it more expensive to go to school and all the stuff that they're trying to do in Washington, but it's all going to work out. It's such nonsense. And I think the tough budget that Bill fought for, that he passed, that was really, really difficult, it didn't immediately kick in so that people didn't see the results quickly enough. And you all know in the '94 midterm election,